25 years ago, I developed a personal mission statement. My mission statement was to demonstrate to senior leaders that treating people with respect and dignity is morally, ethically, and fiscally responsible. If what I believe in, if why you're in this room is really important, there has to be a way to prove it. And we got to be able to prove it with math, because we all understand it's the numbers today that count. Tonight, we're going to do three things. First, I'm going to take you backwards and look at where the world is, the world that you're operating in. You all know about the economic environment, but I want to put this in context because the world we're operating in economically is critical to understand. And secondly, I'm going to go over the research that we've talked about. And last, we're going to show you how you might be able to apply some of this information to your companies and maybe spread success. We at the Center for High Performance believe the economic environment is like a perfect storm, that many things are converging at the same time, and that things have fundamentally changed. And some of that is the economic realities that we're dealing with. What are some of those economic realities you deal with every day? So this perfect storm, these economic realities, these financial realities, and workforce dynamics are all happening at the same time. And in order to compete in that environment, we do need to differentiate, and that differentiation is going to come through our people. So what we did at the Center for High Performance is we said, if that's going on, what is it that's going to make you successful today? And we did a study to determine what were the factors that accelerate profitable growth in this economic environment. We decided to study knowledge workers, people like you, people who are paid to use information to drive business results. In this world where innovation is critical to success, your knowledge workers are going to drive that innovation. That doesn't mean that your other workers might not innovate. It means they're going to be led and managed by a knowledge worker. So what we decided to do was study knowledge workers' experience in their group, the group they affiliated with at work. You might say, why that? I'm going to ask you, how many of you, because I'm going to assume since you're in this room and you chose to come here tonight, that you're high potential, high performers and brilliant people. How many of you have had an experience where you've been in one group in a company and you love going to work every day and you did your very, very best work? How many of you have had that experience? Okay, just the people who have had your hand up. How many of you same human beings, you same high potential, high performers, have been in another group, maybe in the same company or a different company, where you hated going to work every day and you didn't do your very best work? So it didn't have a whole lot to do with how smart you were. It had something to do with what was happening at that group you were functioning in. So what we wanted to find out was, what were knowledge workers' experience in their group? Well, these knowledge workers weren't easy to find. We called 5.5 million people on the internet to identify over 3,000 knowledge workers, which is the largest number of knowledge workers ever studied at one time systematically and rigorously. 77% said, yes, we're part of a high-performing work group. And then we said, prove it. Give us some objective evidence. Does your group make money? From the years 2000 to 2004, did you consistently make money for your company and do something new? A new product, new service, new market, but we were so fair. A new way of doing business, a process improvement. Against that criteria, what do you think happened to this number? What? It went down. Yeah, it went down substantially. Only 10% could support the claim. I want you to think about that for a moment. That means 90% of the highest paid, best educated people from the top companies in the world were not making money and driving innovation from their firms. We heard story after story that sounded like this. Oh yes, our group used to be high performing, and then they cut our budget, cut our resources, cut our staff, and raised their target. There's this popular saying in business today that we have to do more with less. Our study wonders if we're not getting less with less. This speech tonight isn't about bad news, it's about good news. How do you make success contagious? Well, remember that 10% high-performing groups and those 38% non-performing groups? We decided to look at what was the biggest differences between those groups that were high-performing and non-performing. In most quantitative research, what they do is they look at highest scores. Highest scores in our survey were they knew their customer, they met their customer needs, and they knew their business. I would suggest if you're not doing that, you should close your door. What we wanted to find out is what separated the high-performing groups from the non-performing groups. And the first thing we found out, to our surprise, was that we couldn't find a one-size-fits-all leader. But what these leaders had in common was they created a similar kind of environment. There were certain kind of environmental conditions that stayed the same. And that environment, first of all, is discernible. We were able to, if you will, put high-performing groups around the world under a microscope and see what were the attributes that they had in common. More importantly, we were able to quantify that the prevalence of these attributes correlated to making money and driving innovation. The opposite was also true. The absence of these attributes correlated to not making money and driving innovation. Because they are discernible and quantifiable, they're replicable. They can be copied. The first thing that drove high performance around the world by a huge margin was that people in high-performing groups felt valued. What does that mean when asked? Smart people were treated like they were smart. They were told what to do, not how to do it. In high-performing groups, people were having a good time. It was fun to be part of their group. What was fun? Not parties and celebrations, the thrill of getting results. The second thing that drove high performance around the world was the ability to optimize critical thinking. What does that mean? Well, in high-performing groups, they have a secret sauce. And the secret sauce was the way they protect the group. So the leaders protect the group so the people in the group can do their work. Now, some of that protection is very positive. Some of that protection is just knowing how to work the system, go through the politics, get the budget, find the resource, know the right person to talk to. And on our quantitative research, we documented that when the company and the leader worked together to protect the group was higher performing. However, in the stories we were told qualitatively, we found that a lot of that interference was to combat company interference, policies and procedures that got in the way of people doing their job. Now, most of my work is with senior executives who run big companies. I sit in senior executive meetings all of the time. I have never sat in any meeting anywhere with a group of executives where they were saying, how can we create policies and procedures that are going to get in the way of our high-performing groups doing their job? And yet, we had so many people tell us these things. Last but not least, high-performing groups were able to seize opportunities. How did they do this? Well, one of the things we found was that high-performing groups and non-performing groups had strategic planning. They set plans, they stuck to their plans, they measured their plans with goals. But strategic planning didn't differentiate high performance. It was only when strategic planning was coupled with a learning environment, an environment where people could try new things, where people could ask questions, where they could learn from failure, and where they could actually take calculated risk. What won't surprise you is that when groups valued people, optimized critical thinking, and seized opportunities, they were talent magnets. They not only recruited, they retained the best and brightest. You give your people really good training. You give them good succession plans, and you reward them for performance and performance management. You set good goals for them. But do they get put in an environment that takes advantage of all that hard work the people in this room do? Because if they are, not only will they win and you win, your company will win. Thank you very much for listening to the speech tonight.